A Second Chance at Love. Previous episodes are available in playlist, a link is given in the video description. Episode 39. Let us go back. Roxanne sensed that Estella was staring at her, but she did not react. Just now, all Caden said was that Lucian was busy with work. As Lucian was the CEO of Farwell Group, it was natural for him to be busy. However, Roxanne felt that Caden was actually referring to her, insinuating that she had neglected her children as she was too busy with work. Lucian's words from that morning rang in her ears again. Is work really that important? Roxanne kept asking herself the same question. She worked hard because she loved her job, and she also wanted to provide a better life for her children. Yet, her good intentions had seemed to backfire on her. Ms. Jarvis, Estella noticed Roxanne's silence and began tugging at the hem of the latter's clothes. I don't want to go back. Roxanne snapped back to her senses and lowered her gaze to eye the little girl. When she met Estella's innocent gaze, her heart softened. Nevertheless, she had to coax the girl. Be a good girl, Essie. It's very late, and Mr. Lawson came all the way here to pick you up. You'd better go back with him. Estella replied with a pitiful look, but, we agreed that I'd go back if Daddy came over. If he doesn't, I'll stay with you. Roxanne was surprised by her response. Indeed, Estella was Lucian's daughter. Although she did not speak for quite some time due to autism, it did not affect her eloquence after her condition had improved. Well, Daddy sent Mr. Lawson to pick you up. An amused Roxanne squatted down to regard Estella. Estella pursed her lips and insisted. No, I want Daddy to pick me up. Then, she turned around to look at Caden with a woeful expression. A warm sensation enveloped Caden's heart after meeting Estella's gaze. He could not bring himself to say no. Then again, he dared not defy Lucian's order. For one moment, Caden was caught in a fix. He could only cast a pleading look at Roxanne. Ms. Jarvis, Roxanne returned a comforting smile and eyed Estella with a firm expression. Listen to Mr. Lawson, Essie. It's late, and if you don't go home, Daddy will be worried. In the past, Roxanne would probably have ignored Lucian and let Estella stay with her. However, ever since that morning's incident and Roxanne's realization about her relationship with Lucian, she decided there was no point in doing so. Thus, she had to send the little girl back. Seeing how insistent Roxanne was, Estella lowered her gaze dejectedly. Archie and Benny, who were watching from one side, suggested, Mommy, we'll talk to Essie. Once, Roxanne recalled how her sons had persuaded Estella. Relieved, she allowed them to do so. The two boys led Estella to the living room. Roxanne merely saw Archie and Benny speaking to the little girl in a mysterious manner, stealing glances at their mother in the process. Soon, Estella nodded firmly and headed to the doorway. Let's go back, Mr. Lawson, she said as she grabbed the hem of Caden's shirt. It took a while for Caden to react when he realized how quickly Estella had changed her mind. After a few seconds, he agreed, bid farewell to Roxanne, and left with Estella. Once Caden's car had cruised away, Roxanne led Archie and Benny into the living room. Recalling Caden's prior words, she squatted down to look at her two boys apologetically. Have I spent too little time with you all this while? Ever since her involvement in the Damaris family's project, Roxanne had spent most of her time on work. Had Lucian and Caden not brought this up to her, she would not have realized it. Archie and Benny shook their heads when they noticed how guilty their mother felt. Your work is more important, Mommy. We're fine. Benny added, we'll take care of ourselves and you. Archie chimed in, we understand you have to treat patients, and we hope you can save more lives. Moreover, they were already used to this sort of life, so it did not bother them. However, something else was on their minds. Both Archie and Benny thought of their little sister. To Estella, Roxanne had indeed been busy to the point that she could hardly see her mother. Roxanne was about to heave a sigh of relief when she noticed the glum expressions that were starting to form on the boys' faces. So, she asked in a concerned manner, what is it? Do you think I've been too busy? Following that, a crease appeared between Roxanne's eyebrows, and she apologized, at the moment, my work is really important. Once things are settled, I'll definitely spend more time with you. Archie and Benny nodded obediently. We understand. Still, can you bring Essie along, too? Upon hearing Estella's name, Roxanne immediately thought of Lucian, and a hesitant expression slowly appeared on her face. Mommy, Essie misses you a lot, too, the boys persuaded. Estella's pitiful expression came to Roxanne's mind. Her heart softened, and she answered with a smile, all right, I promise I'll take all three of you out when the time comes. The boys cheered triumphantly. Feeling curious, Roxanne asked, what did you say to Essie earlier? Why did she give in so easily? Archie and Benny glanced at each other and smiled enigmatically. It's a secret. Roxanne was taken aback by their answer. Previously, things had turned out the same way. She had no idea what her boys had said to Estella. The three children seemed to be hiding something from her. When she realized this, Roxanne feigned a stern expression. Tell me. Are you hiding something from me? The boys figured that Roxanne would not actually scold them. Instead of taking her seriously, they headed toward the staircase and giggled. We're so tired, Mommy. We'll go to bed now. You ought to go to bed, too. Then, they ran upstairs without waiting for their mother's response. Roxanne felt amused yet helpless as she watched them. These two little. They understand me completely, and they don't even take me seriously. Nonetheless, it was evident that the children were hiding something from her, and she did not know what it was. Roxanne still believed that her children knew better than to do something bad. She only wanted to see whether she could help them. Meanwhile, Archie and Benny ran into their room and heaved a sigh of relief. Mommy has discovered that we're plotting something. Nevertheless, as long as they remained silent about it, Roxanne would be unable to guess what they were thinking about. Hay would never tell their mother that Estella decided to head back so that she could assess Lucian's attitude. Speculation about Heartbreak group. Seeing that the kids were already back in their room, Roxanne tidied up the kitchen and went upstairs to do some work in the study. Even though she had agreed to be the technical advisor of Heartbreak group, she did not know much about the company. Prior to the actual collaboration, Roxanne felt the need to get a rough overview of the company, so she searched for information about Heartbreak group online. To her surprise, the moment she typed in the search bar, she noticed some unusual keywords associated with Heartbreak Group. Heartbreak Group had been accused of tax evasion and selling illegal drugs. Almost all associated searches were negative. Roxanne was stunned and filled with suspicion. She used to be in touch with various medicinal herbs companies in Horrington when she was trying to resolve the Research Institute's issue of medicinal herbs supply, and Heartbreak Group was one of them. She remembered Heartbreak Group's reputation was quite good. Why are there so many negative news about them? Even if I didn't have access to this information back then, Jack should have known. If Heartbreak Group was truly such a terrible company, why would Jack choose to work with them? Roxanne frowned and clicked on the first search result that popped up. It was an article published earlier on the same day. The article read, "We have received reports claiming that Heartbreak Group is selling illegal drugs. Besides, the company is also accused of tax evasion using multiple methods. The relevant government departments have announced that they will carry out a thorough investigation soon." There was a 3-minute-long video in the link that clearly illustrated the evidence of Heartbreak Group's involvement in the allegations. Even if Heartbreak Group were to refute the allegations, they had to first deny their involvement with solid evidence. To do that would require time, and Roxanne knew that this would mean that Heartbreak Group would not be able to clear their name in the nearest time. Roxanne's heart sank when she read the news. Although it was just a local news site in Horrington, there were over 10,000 comments. Roxanne clicked into the comments section. To her dismay, the majority of the comments were spiteful and offensive speculation about Heartbreak Group. Someone wrote, "Heartbreak Group is such a huge company. How could you guys sell illegal drugs and betray our trust?" Another commented, "I heard that there was a leak of virus from their laboratory a few years ago. There has not been a follow-up of that incident since. Who knows what kind of illegal drug Heartbreak Group is developing?" Roxanne was at a loss for words. The whole internet was abuzz with wayward speculation about Heartbreak Group, and in the span of a single day, the negative public opinion had caused the group's share prices to plummet more than half. The more Roxanne read the news, the heavier her heart felt. The widespread accusations reminded her of the time she had been slandered. She could not help but note the striking similarities of both circumstances. Roxanne had only managed to solve the problem when Lucian had pressured the Hightowers and with Harvey's support. If nothing was done to salvage the worsening public image of Heartbreak Group, Roxanne reckoned it would be very likely that they would get dragged down alongside Heartbreak Group from their collaboration, and even the project with Damaris Group might get affected as well. The thought was disturbing, to say the least. Roxanne could not seem to figure out who was trying to attack Heartbreak Group, or whether the person was really after Heartbreak Group at all. Work harder to get Roxanne. Just when she was still reeling in from the shock, Roxanne accidentally clicked on the refresh button. She noticed that there were changes on the page, and she instinctively lowered her head to check it out. Roxanne was even more surprised to see the time the news article had been published, and somehow the fleeting image of Lucian crossed her mind. The news article was published right after Heartbreak Group and Damaris Group collaborated. Heartbreak Group has always maintained a good reputation before they agreed to collaborate with Damaris Group. Caden said Lucian was busy with something tonight when he came over to pick Estella up. I wonder what he's working on. Oddly, and coincidentally enough, the news article was published tonight. Roxanne could only surmise that Lucian was the mastermind plotting against Herbscape Group. Herbscape Group was embroiled in the scandal right after they signed the agreement with Damaris Group. And before that, they were supposed to collaborate with Farwell Group. Farwell Group was infamous for never letting their business partners who walked out on them do well. Right then, Roxanne recalled Lucian's words when she had told him she was going to attend the contract signing ceremony that night. He had said that he would not let the contract signing between Herbscape Group and Damaris Group go on that smoothly. Judging by his attitude then, Roxanne could tell that he was aiming to gain control over Herbscape Group. Then again, Lucian did not stop her from attending the contract signing ceremony between Herbscape Group and Damaris Group. So, is this Farwell Group taking revenge against Herbscape Group? Or is the competition between Farwell Group and Damaris Group still going on? Roxanne was truly stumped. She even wondered if Lucian was doing this because of her. After all, it was unlikely that Lucian did not care about what had happened that morning. If Herbscape Group's reputation was smeared because of her, and in turn, affecting Damaris Group as well, Roxanne wouldn't know what she could do to make up for Jack's losses. Realizing what she was thinking, Roxanne let out a self-deprecating laugh. Haven't I already realized this would happen when I signed the contract with Herbscape Group? Lucian is acting as such because he detests me getting too close to Jack. Roxanne pursed her lips. Well, I could also put the blame on Jack for dragging me into this in this case. Maybe I'll feel better that way. Meanwhile, in the Farwell residence, Estella still remembered the boy's remarks after Caden fetched her home. She was tasked with finding out if Lucian was also mad at Roxanne. Estella knew she was to be blamed in this case. If Lucian was truly mad, she felt the need to appease him and urge him to work harder to get Roxanne. However, it was already 10 o'clock at night, and yet Lucian was still nowhere to be seen. As Estella was already feeling sleepy and had been waiting for a long time, she got a little upset and her eyes turned red. "Ms. Estella, let's go and get some sleep upstairs," Catalina said when she saw that Estella had been waiting in the living room. Estella pouted and shook her head aggrievedly. "Daddy," she wanted to wait for Lucian to come back. Catalina was in a bind right then. "If Mr. Farwell is not back at this hour, I think he'll only be back in the middle of the night. Let's go to sleep first and wait for him to come back. He will surely visit you in your room. Besides, you can also talk to him in the morning." Estella shook her head stubbornly, her little hands clutching the couch. Catalina let out a defeated sigh. Left with no other choice, she could only stand beside Estella and observe her closely. "I know what she wants to say." Estella had always kept to a fixed daily routine. While at Roxanne's house, she had started getting drowsy at around 9 o'clock in the evening and only became a little more awake while on the way home. Now, she had been sitting on the couch for a long time. Although she dearly wanted to wait for Lucian to return, she could not fight off the sleepiness that washed over her, and her eyes slowly closed. Catalina knew Estella's routine like the back of her hand. Upon seeing Estella's head droop lower and lower, she quickly hurried over to the girl's side, preparing to catch her at any time. Just as Catalina anticipated, Estella fell fast asleep within a few minutes, and her body tilted to one side. Fortunately, Catalina was well prepared. She caught Estella in her arms, then carefully carried the ladder upstairs. When she finally left Estella's room and checked the time, she saw it was already late at night. Ms. Estella was so stubborn just now. It seems as though she really does have something important to discuss with Mr. Farwell. Catalina took out her phone and was about to call Lucian when she suddenly heard a noise from downstairs. Craning her neck to take a look, she saw Lucian walk into the house with long strides. He was radiating a cold aura. By the looks of it, he must have been swamped with work tonight to the point that he still has a frown even after getting home. "Mr. Farwell," she called out hesitantly, hurrying down the stairs to greet him. As she took his coat, she said, "Ms. Estella waited for you all night and only just fell asleep." Lucian's frown deepened when he heard that. Caden rushed back to the office immediately after sending Estella home, and according to him, Estella has already forgiven Roxanne. She was also reluctant to leave Roxanne's house. "However, there's no way I can forgive Roxanne. As for what Estella wants to tell me, I can more or less guess what it is she wants to say. I don't want to hear her take Roxanne's side, at least for now. After all, Roxanne's increasingly close relationship with Jack is bad enough to stir up some misunderstanding. Regardless of whether it's for the children's sake or my own reasons, I want to teach Roxanne a little lesson." With that thought in mind, Lucian merely nodded at Catalina expressionlessly and walked upstairs. Seeing that he did not seem to have caught on to the meaning behind her words, she quickly added, "Ms. Estella seemed to have something important to tell you. Do you want to go and check on her?" "No. I know what she wants to say," Lucian replied, rejecting her suggestion indifferently. With that, he went into his bedroom. As Catalina watched him leave, she knew she was in no place to say anything more. All she could do was cast a pitying look at Estella's room. "It's the first time I've seen Ms. Estella like that. I wonder what she wanted to tell Mr. Farwell." Lucian went to take a shower after going into his room. Then, coming out of the bathroom, he browsed through the day's news, which was a bedtime habit of his. He had only just started browsing when he came across the online discussions about Herbscape Group, the contents of which caused him to furrow his brows. "As far as I know, only those within the pharmaceutical industry would discover Herbscape Group's involvement in selling illegal drugs and the bacterial leakage at the company's biological laboratory." His first instinct was to suspect that the former employees of Herbscape Group were behind it. After mulling it over for a little while, he suddenly recalled his conversation with Jonathan that day. Compared to the former employees, this seems more like something Jonathan would do. His and her 841. "I wonder what she will think." Over at the Queen residence, Jonathan had spent almost the entire day carefully crafting a plan to spark public criticism. He had even exposed Herbscape Group's past misdeeds. Once Herbscape Group's reputation is ruined, I doubt the Damaris family will still dare to take the risk and collaborate with them. After the Damaris family cuts ties with Herbscape Group, the latter can only come crawling back to Farwell Group, and it'll be much easier for us to acquire Herbscape Group. With that goal in mind, Jonathan had been monitoring the online sentiment practically the whole day. He kept a close eye on it until late into the night and could not help feeling somewhat disappointed when he saw that the public outcry still had yet to turn out as he expected. "I wanted all of Horrington to be aware of these things Herbscape Group has done. That way, Damaris Group would have no choice but to call off their plans to collaborate with Heartbreak Group to avoid getting caught up in a messy situation. After going through the comments online, Jonathan made a call with a frown. On the other end of the line, a male voice asked respectfully, "Do you have any other instructions, Mr. Queen? Is that all you managed to dig up on Heartbreak Group?" Jonathan demanded coldly. The man quickly answered in the negative. "We still have plenty of dirt on them. It's just that when considering how to deliver a blow that can cause the most damage to Heartbreak Group, I thought of releasing the information little by little." You see, Jonathan fell silent for a moment before cutting in and asking, "What other information do you have on them? Send them over for me to take a look." The person on the other end of the line immediately agreed to do so. Shortly after, he sent a slew of evidence on Heartbreak Group selling counterfeit drugs and smuggling drugs to Jonathan's phone. Jonathan narrowed his eyes coldly, then instructed in an icy voice, "Release all of it. Don't give Heartbreak Group any breathing room. What happened today must have given Heartbreak Group a good jolt. If we hold on to the information, they'll probably have thought of a way to weasel out this scot-free by the time the morning rolls around. By then, even if we release the information, it'll only backfire and turn into a weapon for Heartbreak Group to get back at us." After Jonathan's reminder, the person on the other end of the line realized the risk and quickly promised to follow Jonathan's instructions. Not long after the call ended, a barrage of damaging information on Heartbreak Group broke out on the internet, and the online discussions grew even more heated. The stream of shocking revelations stirred a severe distrust toward Heartbreak Group among some netizens, who demanded the company compensate them for psychological damages. On the other hand, others still wanted to give Heartbreak Group a chance and urged the company to issue a statement. Jonathan was amused as he read the comments imploring Heartbreak Group to give an explanation. Heartbreak Group is probably at their wits' end by now, trying to think of a way to turn the tables. How will they have the time to read these online comments? Even if they do, they won't be able to present any solid evidence to refute all this. They'd only be asking for a castigation if they stepped out to say something. While he was gloating over the fruits of his labor, his phone suddenly rang, and his phone screen lit up to show that Lucian was calling him. For him to call me at such an hour probably means he has seen the chaos I created. However, I've no idea what he'll think about what I did. As those thoughts ran through his mind, Jonathan tamped down his self-satisfaction and answered the call. "What's up, Lucian?" Over on the other end of the line, Lucian continued reading the comments online while on the phone. When he saw that another wave of scandalous details had broken out on the internet, a mocking look glinted in his eyes. Roxanne has always been proud of being a doctor and takes medical ethics very seriously. I wonder what she'll think if she finds out the company she's working with has done so many unlawful things behind her back. I do not care what it takes. Lucian's end of the line was so silent that his breathing was clearly audible. Lucian. Puzzled at not getting any response even after waiting for a while, Jonathan called out Lucian's name. He started feeling tensed, thinking that his actions had drawn Lucian's displeasure. There was another long pause before a low voice said, "You're responsible for the online furor I'm seeing, aren't you?" Lucian's tone was impassive. Jonathan pondered for several seconds before admitting frankly, "That was the easiest and quickest method that came to my mind. As long as Heartbreak Group's reputation gets dragged through the mud, they may even end up approaching us, begging for an acquisition. That response is not in keeping with Jonathan's usually free and easy demeanor, yet it's unsurprising. He has put in a lot of effort to get to where he is today and helped his family gain a solid footing in Horrington's business world. Apart from Damaris Group, they're the only other family that's so powerful. To become a successful businessperson, resorting to despicable means is sometimes necessary. Lucian frowned slightly after hearing Jonathan admit to it. A strange feeling flitted across his heart, and his thoughts inadvertently turned to Roxanne. Even though I want to teach her a lesson, this seems like a big mess that could send all the earlier effort she put into being part of this project down the drain. In the end, Lucian was still hesitant. He simply could not bring himself to be cruel to her. Meanwhile, uneasiness gradually rose in Jonathan's heart. Are you thinking that my methods are a little deplorable? After all, I'm working for Farwell Group now, and Herbscape Group will have to rely on us in the future. For Farwell Group, such underhanded methods are shameful indeed. He felt a pang of regret as the realization dawned on him. If you think it's inappropriate, I can ask them to take down the discussions at once. I promise that all the damaging information online will also be completely removed. Snapping out of his thoughts, Lucian pinched the space between his brows. In the end, he steeled his heart and said, "There's no need for that. You did very well." Jonathan was flabbergasted upon hearing Lucian's response. Then what, if he really does think I did well, what was he thinking about for so long? Jonathan's brows furrowed as he contemplated the matter for a few seconds. Then, he ventured a guess. Is it because of Dr. Jarvis? The only person Jonathan could think of who could make Lucian change his mind was Roxanne. However, Lucian continued talking as though he had not heard Jonathan's question. It's just how the business world works. Since Herbscape Group was the one who committed a breach of contract first, they deserve to be taught a lesson. Lucian's gaze darkened after he said that. His words were not merely meant to refer to Herbscape Group but also to persuade himself. Since Roxanne doesn't know how to keep her distance from other men, I must be the one to give her a wake-up call. Although Lucian did not say anything, Jonathan still managed to guess what the former was thinking. He also knew Lucian did not want to talk about it. Hence, he followed the latter's lead and changed the subject. If that's the case, great. And here I was thinking you wouldn't be able to accept my way of doing things. Lucian smiled faintly, appearing unconcerned. It's just a bit of fun. Like I said before, as long as Herbscape Group falls, I don't care what it takes. Besides, it's not like I've never used worse methods. After hearing Lucian's response, Jonathan finally felt at ease. Refused to acquire them. Meanwhile, at the Damaris residence, Jack was leaving the study after his conversation with Hector. On his way back to his room, the butler suddenly approached him with his phone. "Mr. Damaris, a call for you." Half an hour earlier, Jack's phone had been ringing off the hook. However, the butler dared not answer the phone on his behalf while Jack was still discussing matters with his grandfather in the study. He ended up waiting at the stairwell until Jack left the study. Jack acknowledged the butler's message with a nod and furrowed his brows slightly when he saw the caller ID. It was a call from Dean Lacroix, the CEO of Herbscape Group. "Why is he calling me at such a late hour?" The butler explained helpfully, "He's been calling you non-stop for half an hour." Jack's heart sank. He answered the call with a frown. Before he could utter a word, Dean's panicked voice drifted through the receiver. "Mr. Damaris, thank goodness you've answered your phone. Herbscape Group is in trouble. Please help us. You're the only person I can think of right now." If Dean had known the Damaris residence's address, he would have knocked down their door in the middle of the night after failing to contact Jack for half an hour. Puzzlement flitted across Jack's gaze as he asked, "What happened?" He had been talking to Hector in the study the whole time and was blissfully unaware of the disaster that had unfolded on the internet. Dean was in disbelief at Jack's complete ignorance of the matter. Nonetheless, he did not have the luxury to explain everything to Jack. "Someone published Herbscape Group's past scandals on the internet, and it's going viral. I've received word from both the State Taxation Administration and International Trade Administration. They're sending men over to investigate my company." He then made a plea for help. "Someone must be attacking our company, but I can't think of a potential culprit. The best thing I can do right now is ask you for help." Jack's frown deepened when he heard of the State Taxation Administration's and International Trade Administration's involvement. He had chosen to collaborate with Herbscape Group because of their scale of operation in Horrington. As for the company's background, he had arranged for rather extensive investigations and concluded that their scandalous past was well buried. He would not have worked with them otherwise. To his surprise, Herbscape Group was now embroiled in a massive scandal. Dean's anxiety ballooned at Jack's prolonged silence. He was covered in a cold sweat as he pleaded, "Mr. Damaris, I'm only doing this for both our benefits. We're still collaborators, and Herbscape Group is responsible for supplying medicinal herbs for the Damaris family's new project. If something happens to us, your project will surely be in hot soup. We're in the same boat here." He was clearly worried out of his mind, considering the veiled threat in his plea. Jack narrowed his gaze in displeasure and replied coldly, "Got it. I'll think of what to do after forming a better understanding of the situation." Then, he hung up without giving Dean a chance to respond. Dean realized belatedly he had said something wrong when he heard the called tone. Regret tinged his features. "If I've offended Jack earlier and ruined our chances of getting his help, I'll need to crawl back to Farwell Group for help." Dean regretted his decision to break off his contract with Farwell Group more than ever. Despite Farwell Group's excellent terms, he had backed out of the contract at the last minute. If he went back to them for help now, he would have no grounds to renegotiate a decent deal. In fact, with Herbscape Group's tainted reputation, Farwell Group could very well refuse to acquire them. "Give me some time." After ending his call with Dean, Jack googled Herbscape Group and was swamped with news headlines about the company. Jack read every article carefully, realizing that every post was published that day. The person behind the expose clearly did not wish to give Herbscape Group any room to breathe. Jack raised his brows in surprise as he read the news online. He had to admit that the person who uncovered Herbscape Group's scandalous past was a brilliant mastermind. Only a skilled hacker could dig out the company's well-hidden scandals. The discovery significantly narrowed his circle of suspects. There were few people in Horrington who were this talented and had a history with Herbscape Group. Jack could only think of one person: Lucian. Still, Damaris Group and Heartbreak Group had formalized their collaboration a long time ago. It seemed a little late to be exacting revenge now. What is he playing at? Jack narrowed his eyes and thought. Just then, Dean called him again. He was evidently anxious over Jack's decision. Jack snapped out of his thoughts and nonchalantly picked up the call. Once the line connected, Dean asked hastily, "Mr. Damaris, what do you think? Heartbreak Group can't afford to wait any longer." Dean had mulled over his options and decided to crawl back to Farwell Group for mercy if Jack refused to lend a helping hand. He would throw all his pride out the window and beg Farwell Group if necessary. Jack sounded calmer than ever as he replied, "Don't worry about it. Damaris Group has chosen to collaborate with Heartbreak Group, and we won't leave you to fend for yourselves in times of trouble." Despite his reassurance, Dean's concern was palpable as he asked, "Really? How can I help?" asked Jack in return. After humming and hawing for a while, Dean replied, "Well, I hope Damaris Group can lend us some funds to stabilize Heartbreak Group's share price as soon as possible. If their share price continued its free fall, Heartbreak Group would have to declare bankruptcy the next day, even without the State Taxation Administration's and International Trade Administration's investigation." Jack frowned and asked, "How much are you asking?" Dean cautiously reported a number, 1.2 billion, then, he waited for Jack's response with his heart in his throat. That was a massive sum even for Damaris Group, especially because it was going to a company they had just collaborated with. Dean would not be surprised at all if Jack refused his request. There would only be two possible outcomes then: bankruptcy, or a plea to Farwell Group to acquire them at a dirt cheap offer. Neither was an option he preferred. Jack's expression darkened slightly when he heard Dean's request. He mulled over the sum. 1.2 billion was a fortune, but Damaris Group could still afford it. However, that did not mean it was worth it for a company like Heartbreak Group. Under normal circumstances, Jack would have terminated the contract with Heartbreak Group without further thought. They could pay up the penalty, which would cost far less than what Dean was asking for right now. However, considering that Lucian could be behind Heartbreak Group's scandal, Jack was more inclined to go against his usual instinct. If Lucian wants to throw a wrench in our plans, why should I let him win so easily? With that thought in mind, Jack agreed to Dean's request. "All right. Give me some time." He hung up on Dean again. "All for a woman." Jack's expression darkened further after he briefed his assistant on how they would help Heartbreak Group. He had easily snapped up the collaboration with Heartbreak Group thanks to Lucian, yet now he was paying a hefty price to keep the collaboration and his company's project alive. Lucian would laugh his head off if he knew about this. Something niggled at Jack's mind. Why would Lucian pull a stunt like this now? He didn't have to wait this long to punish Heartbreak Group for pulling out of their deal. Farwell Group is powerful enough to leak such a scandal way before Heartbreak Group signed their deal with us. Jack failed to think of another reason for what seemed like a belated revenge. His phone lit up with another call as he frowned over the issue. Jack glanced at the screen and was surprised when he saw the caller ID. He answered the call immediately. "Ms. Jarvis, why are you calling me at such a late hour?" Roxanne appeared conflicted as she asked, "Have you seen the news about Heartbreak Group, Mr. Damaris?" Jack replied in the affirmative, Mr. Lacroix called me about it earlier. I've agreed to help them." His response stunned Roxanne. If she were in Jack's shoes, she would have cut ties with Heartbreak Group immediately so that their scandals would not affect the company's future projects. Plus, if Heartbreak Group had a history of unlawful practices, it would be difficult to guarantee that they would not do the same while supplying medicinal herbs in the project. Any error during the project, intentional or not, could potentially cause massive losses to everyone involved. Jack seemed to have sensed her concerns. He reassured her, "We don't even know if the news on the internet is real or fake. Since we've decided to work with Heartbreak Group, we have to believe them. Even if the scandals are true, I'm sure they won't dare to betray us when they remember how I've helped them today." Nonetheless, Roxanne remained hesitant. Heartbreak Group's past actions did not sit well with her medical ethics. She considered the topic from another angle. Jack was not only the heir to a family with a prestigious background in medicine but also a businessman. It was understandable that he prioritized profits in any of his dealings. By extension, Roxanne would have to respect Jack's wishes as a willing participant in his project. As that thought crossed her mind, Roxanne suppressed her discomfort and replied, "That would be the best. That's all I wanted to call you about. I have nothing else to add since you already know the situation. Let me know if I can help you with anything, Mr. Damaris." Jack expressed his gratitude at her offer. "Well, thank you in advance, then, Ms. Jarvis." They promptly ended their call. Jack's phone screen turned black once more, reflecting the grimness in his gaze. Roxanne's phone call reminded him that she was potentially involved in Farwell Group and Heartbreak Group's conflict. Not long ago, Roxanne had agreed to be Heartbreak Group's technical advisor, and the scandals broke out shortly after that. It seemed far more likely that Lucian's actions had been triggered by Roxanne than an act of delayed revenge on Heartbreak Group. All for a woman. I can't believe this could happen to someone like Lucian Farwell. Jack scoffed at the irony of the situation. If his hypothesis was true, he would gladly take Roxanne up on her offer to help. "I wanted to tell you something." Lucian woke up later than usual the next morning, having spent the night before following online discussions of Heartbreak Group's scandals. When he opened his room door, he was instantly greeted by the sight of a furious little girl. He knew Estella was angry at him because he did not check in on her after getting home last night. Lucian frowned, but he hid his frustration well. She was his child, after all, and he was not about to ignore her. He pretended not to notice her fury as he asked, "Essie, why are you looking for me so early in the morning?" Estella looked up at her father and said grumpily, "Daddy's a meanie. Daddy doesn't care about me at all." Lucian's brows arched in surprise. He did not expect his daughter to arrive at such a conclusion. "Why would you say that?" he asked calmly despite knowing the reason behind her petulance. Estella puffed up her cheeks in anger, but it soon deflated into sadness as she whined, "Ms. Catalina said you came home last night." She had already been upset at herself for falling asleep before her father returned home. She had thought Lucian would visit her once he arrived home, but no one woke her up. In fact, when she got up that morning, she had thought her father had been out the whole night and felt sorry for him. Estella then headed downstairs, where to her dismay, Catalina revealed that Lucian had come home the night before. Her sympathy instantly morphed into anger, and she stalked back upstairs, waiting outside Lucian's bedroom to interrogate him. Lucian knew Estella would burst into angry tears if he continued playing dumb. He knitted his brows resignedly and bent down to stroke his daughter's hair. "I was too tired last night, so I went straight to my room to rest instead of checking on you." Estella scrutinized his face for a long time. Convinced that he was not lying, Estella gradually let go of her anger. She tugged on his shirt and wailed, "But Daddy, I wanted to tell you something last night." Lucian sighed to himself. It was impossible to evade the topic that Estella pointedly wished to discuss. He would have entertained her advice before knowing about Jonathan's actions. Now, however, he was doing something that could make Roxanne's life difficult, and he was worried he would regret his actions after hearing Estella sing her mother's praises. Lucian removed Estella's hand from his shirt and ruffled her hair, coaxing, "I have to rush to the office. Can we talk about this after I get back from work?" Before she could react, Lucian straightened himself and walked around his daughter. Estella realized belatedly that Lucian had escaped her sight. She hastily chased after him and whined, "But I won't take up a lot of time." "Wait for me, Daddy." Lucian frowned but resolutely ignored her pleas. Meanwhile, Catalina watched them coming downstairs and was perturbed at how unmoved Lucian seemed despite Estella's anxious expression. She guessed the reason behind the young girl's distress and said carefully, "Mr. Farwell." Ms. Estella was asking about her words abruptly cut off when she noticed Estella almost tumbling down the stairs in her haste to reach her father. "Ms. Estella!" Catalina shrieked while racing toward the girl. She already apologized. A moment of silence descended upon the room. When Lucian saw Catalina's expression, he instinctively turned around. His heart skipped when he saw the state Estella was in. He swiftly reached out and caught Estella. "Be careful!" At the sight of Lucian holding Estella, Catalina heaved a sigh of relief. Although Estella was only a few steps away from the floor, she was small and fragile. It would be dangerous if she were to fall. Estella had been in a hurry to chase Lucian that she did not watch her steps. The moment she missed her footing, she was so terrified that she couldn't make a sound at all. Although Lucian had caught her in time, she only felt more and more aggrieved. "Why didn't Daddy wait for me?" At that thought, Estella looked up at Lucian with a pout and grumbled, "I couldn't keep up with you because you were walking too fast." Lucian furrowed his brows. He knew that Estella was blaming him for her almost accident. Meeting her eyes, he said helplessly, "Essie, I told you that I'm really busy these days." I never knew she was such a stubborn little girl. She's doing this because she wants to speak up for Roxanne. Estella looked even more upset when she heard Lucian. "I almost tripped, but it seems that Daddy doesn't plan to listen to what I have to say. If this drags on, when will Daddy and Ms. Jarvis be together?" Faced with Estella's pitiful countenance, Lucian sighed inwardly. He just couldn't help but give in to her. "Okay, I'll listen to you, but we only have 3 minutes. I have to leave after 3 minutes." Immediately, Estella's eyes lit up. She bobbed her head obediently and asked, "Were you angry at Ms. Jarvis last night?" Lucian nodded. His fury was written all over his face the night before. Even if he denied it, Estella probably wouldn't believe him. Puffing her cheeks, Estella said adorably, "Daddy, can you forgive Ms. Jarvis? She already apologized to me last night." Lucian raised his brow at that. "What kind of logic is that? Why do I have to forgive Roxanne just because she apologized to Essie?" Indeed, Lucian was mad because of how Roxanne treated Estella. However, her attitude toward him was also one of the reasons for his anger. Estella refused to give up. She continued seriously, "Ms. Jarvis already knows that she was wrong. If you still don't forgive her, I will be sad." Left with no choice, Lucian scrunched his eyebrows and said, "All right, I'll forgive her." He figured Estella wouldn't let him go if he didn't give in that day. Even after hearing his words, Estella stared at him doubtfully for a while. Lucian did not give her time to speak. He put her down on the floor and said, "Time's up. I have to go to work now. Stay at home and be good." Noticing that he was just trying to get this over with, Estella felt a bit agitated. She wanted to stop him, but Lucian stroked her head and turned around right away. Before leaving, he did not forget to remind Catalina to take good care of Estella. Not that easy. Due to the sudden scandal about Herb's Cape Group, Jack had spent the whole night thinking. In the end, he decided that since he had sacrificed so much, he had to drag Lucian down with him. Early the next morning, Jack drove to Roxanne's house. Roxanne was eating breakfast with Archie and Benny when the doorbell rang. She couldn't help but wonder who it was. When she saw the person standing at the door, she was surprised. "Mr. Damaris, what brings you here so early in the morning? Did anything happen to Herb's Cape Group again?" As she spoke, she looked at Jack in confusion and stepped aside to let him in. Jack nodded firmly, looking solemn. "I spent a lot of money yesterday and helped stabilize their stock prices, but this morning, Herb's Cape Group was ordered to stop its operation. All of its projects and activities will have to be postponed from now on." This meant that if they carried on with their project, Herb's Cape Group would likely be unable to supply them with medicines on time. As a result, the money Jack spent would also go to waste. When Roxanne realized that, she said worriedly, "Then our project, it will also have to be postponed." Jack rubbed his temples and casually mentioned, "I wonder who Herb's Cape Group offended." Upon hearing that, Roxanne thought of her speculation the day before. Guilt filled her as she took in Jack's distressed appearance. In an attempt to change the topic, she cleared her throat and said, "Does this mean Damaris Group's efforts all this time will be in vain? It must be a huge loss." Jack's frown deepened as he remarked, "The money I spent yesterday alone was a huge figure. I originally planned to temporarily stabilize Herb's Cape Group's situation with that money, but I didn't expect the officials to act so quickly. If there's nothing serious, Herb's Cape Group will probably be able to resume its operations after the investigation today, right? It's just that it will need some time to repair its reputation," Roxanne commented, looking uneasy. The next second, she heard Jack chuckle helplessly. "It's not that easy." Roxanne knitted her brows in puzzlement and looked at him. Jack shrugged. "Seeing how the person behind this can ruin Herb's Cape Group's reputation in one day and how the officials treat this matter so seriously, I believe that person must have a powerful background. If that person doesn't want to go easy on Herb's Cape Group, then nothing good will come out of the investigation today. In short, Heartbreak Group had no control over its fate. It was at the mercy of that person behind the scene. Even if Heartbreak Group were really innocent, it would be found guilty if that person said so. Roxanne had considered the possibility of Lucian being the person behind the scene, but she had never thought so deeply about the matter. With Jack's reminder, Roxanne started to doubt the news and the evidence in the reports she had seen the day before. Did Heartbreak Group really do those things, or is that what Lucian wants to make them out to be? What is Lucian trying to achieve by doing this? Roxanne and Jack talked while walking into the living room, then sat down on the couch. Roxanne's mind was filled with her speculations about Lucian that she was in a daze for some time. When she finally came back to her senses, she stood up apologetically and hurriedly prepared a cup of coffee for Jack. "Something to do with me?" Jack accepted the cup of coffee from Roxanne and said politely, "Thanks." Roxanne sat down beside him on the couch and stared at him solemnly. "What should I do now?" A major incident had erupted at Heartbreak Group. Yet, Jack dropped by early in the morning to look for her. It meant that he needed her help. However, Jack responded with another question: "Do you have a suspect in mind?" Roxanne was stunned by his question. In fact, she had a suspect in mind, but she did not know how to approach the subject. Subconsciously, she refused to believe that Lucian would do such a thing. "Mr. Lacroix of Heartbreak Group told me that he suspects Farwell Group is behind the incident." Jack fabricated Dean's words expressionlessly. "It's because Heartbreak Group broke off the contract at the last minute, and as such, Farwell Group decided to take revenge on them." Roxanne frowned and kept quiet. Dean's suspicions were the same as hers. Jack glanced at her and continued, "In my opinion, that might not be the case." Roxanne was confused by his words. She thought Jack meant that Lucian might not be the mastermind. "Mr. Damaris, you think?" Before she could finish, she noticed Jack staring at her with an inscrutable expression on his face. When she met his gaze, Roxanne fell silent, and her heart sank. Jack spoke slowly. "I'm more inclined to think Mr. Farwell took action against Heartbreak Group because of me." Roxanne was astonished. After a moment's silence, she asked, "Why do you say so? Is it because Damaris Group snatched Heartbreak Group away from him previously?" Jack noticed the shift in Roxanne's expression and smiled wryly. "Ms. Jarvis, are you still going to play dumb with me after all we've been through?" Getting stared at by Jack made Roxanne feel guilty, but she did not know what he was getting at. Moreover, she had no idea how to answer him, so she merely gazed at him blankly. "I bet a smart person could tell how much Mr. Farwell cares about you." Jack smiled bitterly and shook his head. "Earlier, I also assumed that my dispute with Mr. Farwell was only business-related. However, after thinking about it last night, I thought of you." As soon as he finished speaking, Jack looked away mysteriously and took a sip of his coffee. On the contrary, Roxanne shuddered. "So, based on what Jack has told me, what Lucian did has something to do with me." However, just when Roxanne was still trying to convince herself that it was not because of her, Jack's voice sounded beside her ears again. He said, "It's true that, of late, we've become closer due to work. As such, I can't blame Mr. Farwell if he misunderstands our relationship. Jack feigned a calm grin. Nonetheless, I now hold a grudge against Mr. Farwell as a result of this issue. After a while, Roxanne finally snapped back to her senses and forced a wan smile. You must be mistaken, Mr. Damaris. My relationship with Mr. Farwell isn't what you think, she wanted to explain when she got interrupted by a strange, meaningful gleam in Jack's eyes. Perhaps, you're the only one who thinks that way, he said. Roxanne was stunned. For one moment, she was almost convinced by Jack's gaze and tone. Does the incident at Herb's Cape Group really have something to do with me? A bit reluctant, Mommy. While Roxanne was still doubting herself, Archie and Benny's sweet voices could be heard. The boys had been waiting in the dining room for quite some time. When Roxanne did not return, they thought Lucian had arrived with Estella, so they ran outside excitedly. However, when they saw the man on the couch, the boys instantly became wary of him. Although Archie and Benny had only met Jack once, they had a lasting impression of that man. They were already worried that Jack would steal their mother away from their father. Furthermore, they knew their parents had a fight yesterday because of Jack. Since Jack had dropped by early in the morning to look for Roxanne, Archie and Benny couldn't help having their guard up. Hello. Jack smiled at the boys and stood up. I didn't prepare a gift for you when we met the last time. Hence, to be on the safe side, I stored a gift in my car so that I can hand it to you when I see you. Hang on, I'll get it. Then, Jack left the mansion to get the gift. Once he was out, Archie and Benny huddled up to their mother and asked, Mommy, why did Mr. Damaris drop by today? Roxanne pushed her frustrations away and tried her best to force a smile at her children. Nothing, it's just because of work. Don't worry. Work again. Archie and Benny glanced at each other. Yesterday, Jack had also summoned Roxanne away using work as an excuse. As a result, Lucian and Roxanne argued over this matter. Well, are you going to work today, Mommy? The boys displayed pitiful expressions on purpose and murmured, You promised you'd take us out today. Ever since her return, Roxanne would take her children outside almost every weekend to relax. Yesterday, she had been summoned by Jack to give a tour of the research institute. As such, she had to reschedule her plans with her children for this day. A major incident had erupted at Herb's Cape Group the day before, and Roxanne was worried about it. Still, he did not want to disappoint her children and decided to go out with them as planned. However, she did not expect Jack to visit her early in the morning. At that point, she was not sure of the day's plans. Archie and Benny lowered their heads woefully when they did not receive a response from their mother. Seeing their looks of disappointment, Roxanne caressed their heads apologetically. I'm sorry. If there isn't anything important, Mommy will try not to leave the house. Even if I do, I'll be back soon. All right. The boys were still a bit reluctant about it. They refused to let their mother spend another minute with Jack, let alone have her go out with him. Roxanne was oblivious to her son's thoughts. She merely assumed they were upset because she could not spend time with them, so she tried her best to console them. While she was comforting her children, Jack entered the mansion with a gift in his hands. I learned from your mother that you like Lego, so I bought this for you. I hope you like it, he announced. Although Archie and Benny disliked Jack, they had good manners. They turned around upon hearing Jack's voice and accepted the gift. Instead of telling him whether they liked it, they just replied courteously, "Thank you, Mr. Damaris." His in her 851. My stomach is hurting. Jack didn't mind. Instead, he flashed a meaningful grin. Don't thank me first. I'm giving you these presents because I have a favor to ask. Hearing that, the kids immediately put up their guard. Roxanne was similarly baffled. This is only his second time meeting the children. What favor does he have to ask from them? Just as she was wondering, she noticed Jack looking at her, causing her to be startled. The next second, he looked at the kids again and said, "I need to borrow your mommy for a while. Is that all right?" The kids exchanged glances, having already expected that to happen. "We knew it. He's here to take mommy away again. If daddy knows about this, I wonder how long mommy and daddy's next fight will last before they reconcile." At that thought, the kids shook their heads without hesitation and uttered matter-of-factly, "Mommy promised to bring us out to have fun today. Adults shouldn't lie to children." Hearing that, Jack shot Roxanne a surprised look. Roxanne was instantly caught in a tight spot. She fathomed Jack must be there to take her away because of work-related matters. The only thing she didn't know was the severity of the issue. Jack explained solemnly, "I've tried my best to acquire more time from Mr. Lacroix. Herbscape Group will be sealed for investigation at 10 o'clock in the morning. Before that happens, we can still enter the premises to bring out whatever material we need to facilitate and ease our subsequent research. This is also why I came here so early this morning." Roxanne tensed up after listening to his elaboration. "I didn't notice anything unusual about his behavior or ask him any questions about his arrival. Since we're so short on time, why did he waste so much time telling me all those things earlier?" Sensing the urgency of the circumstances, Roxanne immediately persuaded her children, "Darlings, I must leave now. You two stay at home obediently and wait for me to come home. I'll definitely bring you out to play, okay?" Archie and Benny were reluctant to let Roxanne leave. Still, because it was a work-related problem, they couldn't come up with an excuse to refuse her. After saying that to her kids, Roxanne got up to leave. The boys grew more anxious as they could tell Roxanne was about to leave the house. Benny hastily tugged at Archie's sleeves, hinting at the latter to think of absolution. Although they were equally smart, Archie was better at keeping his composure most of the time. Archie frowned and cautiously stole a glance at Jack and Roxanne after receiving Benny's signal. When he saw that the adults weren't paying attention to them, he swiftly gestured at Benny with a significant look and mouthed at his Archie was confident that Roxanne would prioritize their health over her work. The boys shared a tacit understanding. Benny swiftly grasped his brother's intention and crouched on the floor, grimacing and clutching his stomach. Archie glanced at Roxanne, who had reached the door, before turning to look at Benny and exclaiming, "What's wrong with you, Benny?" Hearing his voice, Roxanne stopped in her tracks and turned around. Her heart lurched when she saw Benny crouching on the floor and hugging his stomach. She strode up to him at once. "What's the matter? Are you feeling unwell?" Benny sniffled and gazed at her pitifully. "Mommy, my stomach is hurting so badly." Exposed Roxanne knitted her brows and stared at Benny confusedly for some time. He was fine just now. Why is his stomach hurting all of a sudden? He seems to be in a lot of pain. Archie, standing aside, sensed his mother's doubt. His eyes gleamed, and he hurriedly frowned as well. Perhaps we caught a cold when sleeping last night. My stomach is a little upset too. Roxanne was finally convinced after hearing that. She turned to look at Jack apologetically and said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Damaris. The kids are not feeling well. I need to check on them." Jack sized up Archie and Benny before grinning considerately. "Their health is important. I don't mind waiting a little longer. You can summon me anytime if you need assistance." Jack was almost as skilled as Roxanne in medical practice. Not only that, but he also had a few years of experience in providing medical consultations to children. He was very knowledgeable in diagnosing children's conditions. Archie and Benny exchanged a panicky look when they heard Jack's offer to help. They nearly forgot that he was also an incredible physician. Their preteens of being sick would be exposed if Jack was the one to examine them, and they reckoned Roxanne wouldn't be pleased to find out about their deceit. While the boys contemplated on the way to reject Jack's kind gesture, Roxanne said, "It's fine. I'm more familiar with the condition of their bodies anyway. Please sit in the living room for a while, Mr. Damaris. I'll come downstairs right after I'm done treating them." Jack nodded indifferently and reoccupied the seat on the couch. The boys let out an inward sigh of relief after Roxanne turned down the offer in their stead. Then, they compliantly followed her upstairs. A helpless look spread across Roxanne's face as she led her sons into the bedroom. She had noticed the changes in their facial expressions when Jack had volunteered to help. Naturally, she could guess that Archie and Benny were probably lying. Nevertheless, Roxanne was still a little worried, so she told the kids to lie on the bed and began to examine their bodies. "Can you point out which part of your stomach is hurting?" She stood beside Benny and gazed at him concernedly. Of course, Benny wasn't feeling any pain. However, since there was no turning back, he could only brace himself and gesture randomly. "All these places are hurting." After saying that, he questioned his mother piteously, "Mommy, am I very sick?" Looking at the places pointed out by Benny, Roxanne felt utterly helpless. If these places were really hurting, he would have been beyond treatment a long time ago. Still, if I expose him now, he probably won't learn the lesson and will resort to tricking me with this method again in the future. With that thought in her mind, she feigned seriousness and grasped Benny's wrist. She checked his pulse and pressed various spots on his stomach while asking him about his signs and symptoms. Benny felt ticklish because of the way his mother was applying pressure on his abdomen. Still, he contained the urge to laugh and complained that all the spots she touched were painful. Roxanne thought Benny was quite pitiable for having to suppress his laughter. Ultimately, she stopped tormenting him and loosened her grip while wearing a solemn facial expression. "Mommy," Archie called out warily to his mother when he noticed her unusual countenance, thinking that she had seen through their falsehood. Roxanne furrowed her brows and looked at Benny worriedly. "There's a chance you're suffering from acute appendicitis. You'll need to undergo surgery as soon as possible. Don't be afraid. I'll send you to the hospital right away." With that, she pretended as if she was going to lift Benny in her arms. The colors drained from Benny's face after he heard his mother say he needed surgery. "Mommy," Benny's voice trembled slightly as he attempted to conceal his fear. "Do I have to go for the surgery?" Roxanne nodded fervently. "Your acute appendicitis will only worsen if you don't, and you'll be in even more pain. I'm worried about you." Benny hesitated for several seconds and gradually removed his hand from his stomach. "Mommy, I'm feeling much better. I'm perfectly fine now. Let's not go for the surgery, please." Roxanne shook her head at once. Archie and Benny eyed one another. Their eyes were full of fear and regret. Archie tugged at the hem of Roxanne's shirt gingerly and said obediently, "Mommy, we're both sorry for lying to you just now. I was the one who asked Benny to pretend to be sick. Please don't bring him for surgery." Benny got down from the bed and stood before Roxanne guiltily as well. Roxanne looked down at Archie and Benny and sighed internally before ruffling their hair. "Have you learned from your mistake?" They hurriedly nodded. Roxanne crouched down to their eye level and asked patiently, "Can both of you tell me why you felt the need to lie?" Archie and Benny exchanged glances again and were at a loss for words. Roxanne waited silently and didn't pester them for an answer. "Because we don't like Mr. Damaris," Benny admitted apprehensively, then carefully observed Roxanne's expression. A look of surprise flashed across Roxanne's eyes. She had assumed the children had pretended to be sick to prevent her from leaving. Little did she know it had nothing to do with that altogether. This was the second time she'd heard Benny and Archie actively disliking someone. Previously, it was Aubrey, as they'd witnessed her and Frida causing trouble for her. However, Jack had always been kind to both her and the children. She could not comprehend why they'd say such a thing. "Can you tell me why you don't like Mr. Damaris?" Roxanne asked in puzzlement. Jenny and Archie pursed their lips and did not give a reason. "No idea. We just don't like him." Roxanne furrowed her brows and looked at them earnestly. "You can't say that. No matter what the reason is, you have to give me one. Otherwise, I won't be able to decline Mr. Damaris' kind offers on your behalf in the future." Benny frowned in reluctance and lowered his head further at that. They couldn't possibly reveal that it was because Jack would steal Roxanne from Lucian. Roxanne tried her luck on Archie instead at Benny's reticence. Archie said innocently, "The reason is that ever since you met Mr. Damaris, you've been spending far lesser time with us. This happened yesterday and today as well." His words hit Roxanne's sore spot. She'd indeed been busy with work after knowing Jack and had neglected her children. Lucian had even confronted her about it the day before. Roxanne immediately felt apologetic toward Benny and Archie and didn't even doubt the veracity of their words. "Mommy, can you stay and accompany us today?" The children once again played the sympathy card. Roxanne caressed Benny's and Archie's heads. "I'm sorry, but I have important work that requires immediate attention. Both of you have heard that the company is going to be seized shortly. I have to take a trip there no matter what." The two children stared at the ground in sullen silence. They knew how important work meant to her. However, they still detested the fact that she would be spending time with Jack in the process. Roxanne felt apologetic yet confused as she took in the children's reluctant looks. The children didn't mind when she was up to her neck with work overseas. They didn't even utter a word of complaint when she was occupied with finding a medicinal herbs company for the research institute when she was back in the country. What is it this time? Mommy, are you going to let Mr. Damaris become our daddy? Benny blurted out. Roxanne paused for several seconds and finally understood the children's concerns. She did not know whether to be amused or upset as she assured them, Mr. Damaris and I are work partners, nothing more. He's like the others you've met when we were overseas. She locked her eyes on both Benny and Archie intensely. Both of you need not worry. I'll ask for your opinions first if I ever have any plans to do so. I won't let someone you dislike become your daddy. The weight on the children's hearts had finally been lifted as they inclined their heads compliantly. Roxanne let out a sigh of relief now that Benny and Archie understood her. Checking the time and seeing that it was getting late, Roxanne got to her feet and patted Benny's and Archie's heads affectionately. I'd better get going, or it affect my work. Both of you, wait for me at home. I'll be back soon. We'll go out together and have fun later. They promised to be obedient and apologized to Roxanne once more. We're sorry for scaring you just now, Mommy. Roxanne smiled. It's all right as long as you're aware of your mistakes. Don't hesitate to tell me anything next time and don't pretend to be sick again. I'll be worried. The children agreed to that. Then Roxanne turned to make her way downstairs. Jack was sitting on the couch downstairs. He got to his feet at the sight of her and asked, "How are the children?" Roxanne gave a sheepish grin as she recalled the children's words. They might have gotten a cold last night. I gave them some medicine and told them to get some rest. Jack inclined his head slightly. If that's the case, you need not trouble yourself. I can head to Herbscape Group myself. It's all right. We'll just come back sooner. Jack did not bother convincing her any further and assented at once. Meanwhile, Lucian left the Farwell residence in a hurry without eating breakfast. Estella lost her appetite and was fuming, as she didn't get to finish saying what she wanted to say. Catalina tried coaxing her for some time, but she shook her head stubbornly and refused to open her mouth. Ms. Estella, Catalina glanced at Estella helplessly. Estella raised her head and looked at Catalina pitifully. Ms. Catalina, I want to go and play with Archie and Benny. She had no idea how to tell her father that she needed help from the brothers. Catalina's heart went out to Estella. However, she had no choice but to feign ignorance as she recalled Lucian's orders before he left the premises. He did not want to lie. Estella's mood turned sullen when Catalina didn't respond. A few minutes later, Catalina gave in and explained, Mr. Farewell is very busy these days. He ordered me to make sure that you stay at home obediently. If you want to go anywhere, you'll have to ask him when he's back. The thought of her father had Estella turn her head to the side in frustration. Catalina let out a sigh and called Lucian. Lucian was having a meeting at the office when his phone vibrated. Seeing Catalina's name flashing across the screen, he hesitated briefly before leaving the room to take the call. What is it? Catalina shot a glance at the still upset Estella before speaking into the phone. Ms. Estella has been sulking since morning, Mr. Farwell, and she didn't even touch her breakfast. When Estella heard Catalina talking to her father on the phone, she slowly turned around and stared at the phone. She wanted to talk to her father too. Noticing Estella's intention, Catalina passed her the phone. Lucian was about to ask for the reason when he heard his daughter's voice. "Daddy, I want to play with Archie and Benny." Estella's voice reflected her surly mood. When Lucian recalled Estella's anxious and sad expression before he left for work that morning, his heart softened. Yet remembering Roxanne's ruthlessness had him frowning with displeasure. "Ms. Jarvis is very busy lately, so be a good girl and stay at home, okay? Don't create trouble for Ms. Jarvis." Estella harumphed. Lucian rubbed his temples, feeling the throbbing in his head. "Be good. I'll bring you to the amusement park after work." "No." Estella pouted. "I want to play with Archie and Benny." Lucian looked toward the conference room and coaxed, "I still have some work to do. We'll talk about this tonight." Naturally, Estella wouldn't take his words seriously after last night's incident. Not only did she defy him, she even moved the topic to something that worsened Lucian's headache. "You said you were going to make Ms. Jarvis my mommy. Why are you not letting me go and play at her house? You're just angry at her." Estella brought up the issue she had raised that morning. Lucian didn't reply to her and merely scrunched up his brows. He was unsatisfied with Roxanne, but if Estella found out about it, surely she would blame him. Yet he didn't want to lie to her. Estella knew her father's character. She sniffled, and her eyes turned red. Hearing her sniffle, Lucian said resignedly, "I'll help you find a mommy. It won't necessarily be Ms. Jarvis, but I'm sure you'll like her." "No." Tears started streaming down Estella's cheeks as she sobbed, "I want Ms. Jarvis. I only want her." "Bad daddy." Catalina didn't expect that a phone call would send the child into a crying fit. She hurried over to Estella's side to comfort her. "What's wrong, Ms. Estella?" Alas, Cataline's soothing words fell on deaf ears as Estella began bawling harder. Lucian's brows creased when he heard the chaos on the other side. "Catalina, please look after Estella. I'll be right back." "Okay." After hanging up the call, Lucian strode back into the conference room, handed over his position as the chairperson of the meeting to his vice president, and raced back to the Farwell residence. "Can you forgive me?" When Lucian returned to the Farwell residence, Estella was no longer in the living room, and Catalina was nowhere to be found. "Mr. Farwell." He reached for his phone, about to call Catalina when she came down the stairs with a grim expression. His eyebrows drew together as he asked, "Where's Essie?" Catalina pointed at Estella's room on the second floor and said, "Ms. Estella has locked herself in her room again. I don't know how to get her out." Estella had been crying non-stop since the call ended. No matter how much Catalina consoled her, she refused to calm down. After bawling for a while, Estella abruptly picked herself up and dashed to her room upstairs. Catalina's reaction was merely slower by a split second. By the time she reached the second floor, Estella had already locked herself in her room. No matter what Catalina said, Estella would not open her door. At first, Catalina could still hear Estella's muffled sobs. But the muffled crying died down after a while, leaving only silence. Catalina panicked and called Lucian, but Lucian didn't pick up any of her calls. She wanted to get the keys to Estella's room but had no idea where Lucian kept them. Just as she was losing hope, she heard movement at the front door. Catalina rushed down the stairs, hoping it was Lucian at the front door, and relief flooded her at the sight of him. Lucian frowned after hearing about Estella's behavior. He marched up the stairs without changing into indoor slippers. Catalina hurriedly trailed after him, and they stood at the door to Estella's room. Lucian suppressed the unease pricking his chest and knocked on the door. "Open up, Essie. I'm home." There was no movement inside. Lucian glanced at Catalina with a furrow between his eyebrows. Anxiety crossed Catalina's face. "It's been like this for a while now. I think you should get the key for the door, Mr. Farwell." Perhaps Estella heard Catalina's suggestion as something hit the door hard right after. Obviously, Estella didn't want them entering her room. Catalina was worried and felt sorry for Estella. "Ms. Estella, please calm down and talk it out with Mr. Farwell. He has always loved you very much." Another thud sounded at the door. Lucian frowned at her tantrum and silently left to grab the keys in his study. The second he cracked the door open, a doll flew toward him. Lucian moved to the side, letting the doll fly over his shoulder and out the door, finally landing by Catalina's feet. Catalina looked down at the doll on the floor, and distress filled her eyes. It was Estella's favorite doll when she was younger. She had never thrown it before when she was ill, even during her worst fits of anger. Comprehension dawned on Catalina that Estella was beyond furious. Lucian walked into the room and saw that Estella had curled herself up in the corner of her bed. Seeing that Lucian had entered, Estella buried her head between her knees in anger. She didn't want Lucian to see her expression. At a glance, Lucian felt as if time had turned back to Estella's autistic days. His heart sank, but it didn't stop him from approaching her. He crossed the room slowly to sit down beside her. "I know you're mad at me for not listening to you, but I'm indeed busy these days. Can you forgive me?" Estella shook her head silently. "Not only did Daddy not listen to me, he even went back on his word during the call earlier. He promised me he would make Ms. Jarvis my mommy, but now he's saying my mommy won't necessarily be Ms. Jarvis. Bad Daddy. Give her a call." Lucian felt helpless upon seeing how unperturbed Estella was by what he said. Ever since the little girl got close to Roxanne, she had been practicing double standards and treating her better than him. What Roxanne did last night was too much, but Essie still decided to forgive her. Yet, Essie is mad at me for not paying attention to all the good things she said about that woman. She isn't even listening to me anymore. Had Lucian not learned that Roxanne was Estella's biological mother, he might have had difficulty accepting the double standards. After a short while, Lucian suppressed his grievance and comforted the little girl. "Didn't you say you have something to tell me? I'm all ears now." Estella lifted her head and glanced at him. Lucian's eyes darkened, and his heart ached when he saw the expression on her face. He thought she did not give him any response because she was upset. However, when she lifted her head, he realized her cheeks were stained with tears. "Bad Daddy," Estella said in between sobs, feeling utterly aggrieved. Lucian was stunned by her reaction. Instead of upsetting the little girl further, he nodded and tried pacifying her. "Yes, it's all my fault." He wanted to go near Estella to wipe off her tears, but she took a few steps back as if she was avoiding a monster. The man's hand was left hanging mid-air. Her reaction now instantly reminded him again of the time when she was autistic. Estella might have started conversing with people, but at that moment, she was acting like how she did in the past. "I don't want Daddy." The little girl burst into tears. "I want Ms. Jarvis." Lucian's eyes darkened. Seeing Estella crying non-stop, Catalina immediately looked at Lucian and suggested, "Mr. Farwell, why don't you give Mrs. Farwell a call?" She thought it might be helpful for Estella to listen to Roxanne's voice. Lucian's gaze turned even darker when he heard how Catalina addressed Roxanne, but he knew he had to do something to calm Estella down. After remaining silent for a few seconds, Lucian took out his phone and dialed Roxanne's number. Meanwhile, Roxanne had arrived at the entrance of Heartbreak group. Before this, Jack had informed Dean they were coming. By the time they arrived, Dean was already waiting for them in the lobby. "Hello, Mr. Damaris. Nice to see you, Dr. Jarvis," Dean greeted them respectfully. Roxanne could not help but feel ironic when she noticed the change in his attitude. The last time when they met at the agreement signing ceremony between Heartbreak Group and Damaris Group, Roxanne remembered Dean was still all high and mighty. At that time, Dean viewed himself as the equal partner of Damaris Group. Yet, everything seemed to have changed in the blink of an eye after yesterday's incident. Jack responded to his greeting with a gentle nod. Then, in an icy voice, he asked, "Are we ready?" Their interaction at the entrance could have easily misled people into believing Jack was Dean's superior. Dean, who did not seem to be bothered by Jack's attitude, played along. "Yes, everything's ready. You can collect the items after signing the document." With a grateful look, he added, "Mr. Damaris, I want to thank you for what you did last night. And don't worry. As long as Heartbreak Group can overcome this crisis, we'll follow your commands and do everything as you say." "That is not what I meant." A corner of Jack's lips quirked up. "The 1,200,000,000 I forked out last night do make a big difference." He was not surprised by Dean's humble behavior that day. Oblivious to what had happened between the two men last night, Roxanne kept mum and stood behind Jack. The moment they stepped into Heartbreak Group, Roxanne's phone rang. The two men stopped walking and turned around to look at her. Roxanne responded with an apologetic smile before fishing out her phone from her pocket. Her expression stiffened when she saw the caller's name on the screen. "What's wrong? Are the kids not feeling well?" Jack expressed his concern. Roxanne froze for a bit upon hearing that. After regaining her composure, she hung up the phone and smiled. "It's not an urgent matter. Let's sign the papers first, shall we?" Jack and Dean did not think much. They turned around and continued walking. However, Roxanne's phone rang again after she took a few steps. Her heart sank when she saw the name on the screen. This time, she apologized to Jack and Dean. "I'm sorry. I have to take this call. Please proceed without me. I'll catch up with you shortly." After bobbing her head at the men, Roxanne turned around, walked to the entrance, and answered the call. Before she could speak, she heard Estella wailing from the other end of the phone. "What's wrong? What happened to Essie?" Roxanne was worried about the little girl. Lucian suppressed his displeasure and answered in a deep voice, "She wants to see you. If you're available, please do me another favor." He could not help but brood over how quickly Roxanne had ended the first call he made. "I don't know what she's thinking, but I believe she's throwing a tantrum." At the thought of that possibility, Lucian could not help but smirk. She was at fault, yet she had the audacity to hang up on me. After a short pause, Roxanne responded hesitantly, "But I'm a little busy right now. The issuance of closure would take effect in less than 30 minutes. They had to work fast because any delay would cause all the items in Herbscape Group to be discarded." Lucian's expression turned grim immediately. He did not take the rejection well. Upon noticing the change in his facial expression, Catalina instinctively took a step back. "Essie has been crying the whole morning." Lucian was on the verge of exploding, but he still tried to contain his anger. Estella bawled more loudly when she realized Roxanne was reluctant to visit her. Hearing the little girl squeal over the phone broke Roxanne's heart. Nevertheless, she had no choice but to turn him down. "I'm sorry. I'm caught up with work right now. Can you give me an hour? I'll rush over once I'm done here." Right after she spoke, Lucian responded icily, "You don't have to if you're busy. Essie is just throwing a tantrum. You don't have to worry about her since you're not related to her anyway." Roxanne knitted her brows upon hearing that. "That's not what I meant." Before she could defend herself, Lucian interrupted, "Sorry for disturbing you. I'll handle Essie myself. Have a nice day." The man then hung up right away. Roxanne stared at the black screen, feeling anxious. Would she feel guilty? While Roxanne was in two minds over whether or not to hurry to the Farwell residence, Jack strode out with a document in his hand and called out, "Ms. Jarvis." She had no choice but to suppress the worry in her heart and quickly walked toward him. "What's this? You didn't come in after some time, so I thought I'd bring out the document you needed to go through. You can take a look and sign it if there are no issues." Hearing that, she murmured her assent and checked the document carefully. A moment later, she looked up at Jack and nodded. "Everything looks fine." "Excellent," he said with a smile. "You look a little upset. Did something happen?" Recalling the sound of Estella's cries, Roxanne fell into a slight daze. Jack was puzzled when he saw that she did not respond after a long time. "Ms. Jarvis." Roxanne jolted to her senses and shot him an apologetic smile. "These are the medicinal herbs we need. Is there anything else you need my help with?" Jack shook his head. Seeing that, Roxanne took her leave immediately. "I'll have to trouble you to take care of the rest, then. I have to attend to some urgent business, so I'll head off now." Observing the expression on her face, Jack agreed in a non-committal way, "Since it's something urgent, you should get going." Roxanne nodded at him gratefully before turning and hurrying away. Jack watched her leave with a deeply perplexed look in his eyes. "I wonder what happened to make her so worried. Archie and Benny didn't look so well when we left her house this morning. However, based on my experience after practicing medicine for years, they're most likely faking it. I couldn't be bothered to figure out the reason for it, but from the looks of it now, it appears as though I made an error in judgment. What else could get her that worked up apart from her children and work?" As that thought crossed his mind, he laughed at himself. I can't believe there'd come a time when I'd make an error in judgment. Mr. Damaris, do you have any other instructions for us? Dean asked as he walked out of the building a moment later. Puzzled to see Jack all alone, he inquired, "Where's Ms. Jarvis?" Jack snapped out of his thoughts and glanced at Dean expressionlessly. He handed the list he was holding to the latter and said, "Prepare the medicinal herbs listed here." Not daring to probe further, Dean immediately acceded. Then, he went back into the building with the list to instruct the staff to complete the task as soon as possible. Over at the Farwell residence, Estella watched her father hang up the phone, her eyes wet with tears. When Lucian met her gaze, a pang shot through his heart, and he felt annoyed at Roxanne. Essie has been crying her heart out and even heard Roxanne say she couldn't come over immediately. Even so, there's still a glimmer of hope in her eyes. If Roxanne saw the expression on Essie's face now, I wonder what she'd think. Would she feel guilty? When is Ms. Jarvis coming over? Estella stretched her arms toward Lucian pitifully, sobbing so bitterly that she could hardly breathe. Lucian's heart ached as he drew the girl into his embrace. He was unsure of what to say. Even if Roxanne does come, she'll only get here an hour later. She may be fine with letting Essie cry for 1 hour, but I don't have the heart to do so. Daddy, Estella urged while shedding tears. Lucian stroked her head comfortingly and sidestepped the question. There. I'll take you to go look for Mr. Lon. At this point, the only other person apart from Roxanne who can stop her from crying is probably James. Estella was unwell. Roxanne left Herbscape Group and drove straight to the Farwell residence. Less than 20 minutes later, her Mercedes slowly rolled to a stop in front of the manor entrance. She rang the doorbell frantically, and it was not long before Catalina answered the intercom. Mrs. Catalina began without thinking when she saw the person on the screen. However, she quickly caught herself and changed what she was saying. Ms. Jarvis. Too worried about Estella crying, Roxanne had no time to pay attention to the little details. Hurry up and let me in, Catalina. How's Essie? Catalina sighed inwardly when she saw how anxious Roxanne looked. You're too late. Mr. Lucian has taken Ms. Estella out. Roxanne's expression froze when she heard that reply. I thought Lucian only said that in a fit of anger. I can't believe he'd actually be so cruel. Since Essie hasn't seen me, she must still be bawling her eyes out. The thought of that brought Roxanne to her senses, and she asked in a low voice, Do you know where he took her? Catalina hesitated for a split second. However, the recollection of Lucian's parting instruction made her shake her head. The light in Roxanne's eyes went out, and a wave of regret washed over her. If only I'd arrived a little earlier. Why don't you give Mr. Farwell a call? Catalina could not stop herself from suggesting. Although she felt bad for Estella when Roxanne did not promise to come over immediately, she could not bear to see the look on Roxanne's face. Indeed, Roxanne was so anxious that she had forgotten she could do so. Thanks to Catalina's reminder, she suddenly realized that was what she should do. Thank you. I'll call him right away. With that, she fished out her phone from her bag, pulled up Lucian's number, and made the call. However, as soon as the call connected, it was declined just as it started ringing. Then, the sound of a female computer-generated voice rang out. She tried calling again immediately, but the same thing happened several times. He's evidently angry at me. I'm afraid he probably won't pick up my calls for now. As the realization dawned on her, guilt welled within her. All I can do is try my luck and send Lucian a message. I wonder how Estella is. Meanwhile, Estella's cries grew louder and pierced the air whenever the phone rang as they made their way to James' clinic. Ms. Jarvis. Nonetheless, Lucian remained unmoved and did not hesitate to decline the calls as soon as his phone rang. Despite hearing Estella's sobs, he denied that the calls were from Roxanne in a chilly tone. No, it's not Ms. Jarvis. She's still busy working. Estella's wails soon grew weaker again and gradually turned into whimpers. Lucian glanced at her through the rearview mirror and saw that although her cries were much softer, tears continued streaming down her cheeks. The sight of that caused his gaze to darken. Spotting the message notification that popped up on his phone screen, he frowned and swiftly dismissed it. Then, he called to ask James to spare some time for him. Upon learning that Estella was unwell, James agreed at once. After ending the call, Lucian could stop himself from tapping on the message Roxanne had sent. Roxanne, sorry for being late. Where are you and Essie? I'll rush over there immediately. A scornful look flashed in his eyes after he read the message. Then he closed the message interface. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.